Talking about, but we are going to try and talk about racing with Simon Holt and Mike Cattermole. Simon will be commentating today. Mike will be a master of ceremonies inside the parade ring today for King George Day. What a race that we've got to look forward to. First up, Mike, how good a King George of all the ones that you've seen? Can you go back to 75, which was my first?
Was that your first? The big one? The race of the century?
Yeah.
Well, that's impressive.
22 then, I suppose.
Yeah, young boy. he was in short trousers there, wasn't he?
I was a spotty teenager, but I do remember coming to that one.
Do you know what, Rupert? My first King George was 85, and it was a similar scenario to today because we had Oh So Sharp running, who was coming in here as an odds-on favourite, and up against her was Law Society, the Irish Derby winner. Slip Anchor wasn't around, he got hurt sadly, but Rainbow Quest was in there, he was going to go and win the Art later in the season, and a really good high-class lineup. And we all thought she was an absolute certainty, and she got turned over by Petoskey. I mean, I couldn't believe what my eyes were telling me. It was extraordinary sight. I mean, Willie Carson always said that day that Petoskey was very, very good that day. But nonetheless, it was a huge shock that the great filly got turned over.
Simon, your first one?
Wow, just I can't remember. It's probably so long ago. I mean, I think I was here when Dancing Brave won.
Yeah.
So that's mid-80s.
Yeah,
and
86, I've been told.
yeah, I mean, so that, and obviously that was one of the more memorable King Georges. But when you look, just looking in the race card, all the horses that have won this race, I mean, all the way back to Mill Reef and Brigadier Gerardo Nijinsky and all through the recent years. It's a fantastic roll of honour, isn't it?
Right, well, so is Enable going to suffer the same fate as Oh So Sharp, Mike?
I mean, it's an interesting one, Rupert, because we've seen, you know, John Gosden has come back with Tagruda here before, hasn't he, a couple of years ago, 2014, but she didn't run in the Irish Oaks that year, and this filly had a bit more time to run in Ireland. She won very, very well. I mean, she could end up being an absolute stonewall certainty, couldn't she? But I don't know what Simon thinks, but the clock said she ran the last 3 furlongs an extraordinarily fast time at the Curragh, which makes her outstandingly good. But would that have left a mark, Simon? That's the big question mark, isn't it?
Well, there was quite a long gap between Epsom and the Curragh, and obviously they would have looked her over, and as far as they can possibly tell, they think she's all right. I thought on both occasions she hit the line so strongly, particularly at Epsom. If you watch back the Oaks again, my word, she was really rushing through the line. She's the great asset she has, apart from a bit, you know, a great deal of ability, is her stamina. And I think, you know, with the rain coming in, and we've got to assume that she will go in the ground. Being a daughter of Nathaniel, I think she will. But it's going to be a stamina race, and I think that is going to play to her strengths, not least because she's got a stone less than all the older colts and geldings.
And Frankie's not eating, basically. While we're all having lovely lunches here, he's having a bit of dried up fish.
He's done 8 stone 6 once, I think, in the last 12 months. I mean, he's doing 8-7 today. But it's interesting, this weight for age allowance they allow for immaturity of 3-year-old racehorses. They've trimmed it slightly, and she gets a stone today from the older male horses, whereas Oh So Sharp, you know, she got 16 pounds and still couldn't win. And Tagruda got 15 pounds only 3 years ago. And I just feel as though that's an interesting little line to examine. For example, Barney Roy and Ulysses in the Eclipse. You know, if that had been run a year ago, Barney Roy would have won because he would have got another pound off Ulysses, but he didn't. So it's just an interesting. It's got so many different aspects to it.
Working, Highland Reel might not like the rain, so therefore, yeah. But I want people to love. I want to share the love with Highland Reel, who doesn't, you know, maybe it's just because he's come from the Aidan O'Brien sort of factory of brilliant horses that he doesn't get the love.
Oh no, he doesn't. I mean, he's so brave, Simon, isn't he? The thing about Highland Reel is we all know he's better on top of the ground, but his brother doesn't seem to mind it, Idaho, does he?
No, I mean, I think Idaho could run a big race, given the conditions today. I mean, again, he's a horse that, you know, he'd have surely won the St Leger last season. I mean, he was cantering at the time. I mean, he'll get the trip really well. But isn't Highland Reel just still slightly underestimated in sort of the history of the sport? I mean, he's a horse that's won 6 Group or Grade 1 races, and he just keeps on delivering. You couldn't rule him out, even though the ground might have gone against him.
Yeah. So who is the ground, you know, okay, we talked about the big two, but does that mean is Ulysses, who won that thrilling Eclipse, but is going up in trip, but is a typical Michael Stout improver? You've mentioned Idaho, there's My Dreamboat. Okay, we could probably keep going on.
Soft ground. Yeah, I mean, My Dreamboat does. I'm just not convinced about My Dreamboat's love for the game anymore. I think he's a very good racehorse. I just didn't like the way that Adam had to really get after him to to get a response at Newbury when Hawkbill beat him. I wonder maybe he's had enough.
I have a similar query about Jack Hobbs as well.
Me too, Si.
Because I
Me
didn't
too.
like the way
Yeah.
he pulled so hard in the early stages of the Prince of Wales. Okay, it was fast ground, which wouldn't have suited him, but you know, he just never switched off, and he's a bit of a mercurial horse, I think. You know, when he's good, he's very good, but I think he can have the odd off day.
Okay, but are you going to see the filly after all those years, 32 years later? Are you going to put your oh so sharp angst behind you and see an able win, Mike?
It's almost like haunting me that day out, isn't it? But look, I tell you what I've done. I've had a small each-way punt on Ulysses, the
Join the
winner.
club, yep,
yeah,
yep.
well done. And Ben Battle. I mean, Simon probably laughed and think, Ben Battle? But he's incredulous look on his face. But I mean, he ran fifth in the Derby, given so much to do that day, and I just think, I think he's a lot better than he's shown so far, and I think there's improvement to come with him.
I think it's stretching it, to be honest. I mean, he is an improving horse, I'll give him that. But it was only a listed race here he won, and I saw the runner-up Order of the Garter get turned over in France subsequently. I mean, I think he's got a lot of improvement to make. But I do like his attitude, though, and I also think he was given a somewhat bizarre ride at Epsom.
Yeah,
I mean, he was well out of his ground, and he did finish really well.
Told you it's about 16 to 1, so...
Ben Battle, is it? Oh, well, he would be, yeah. He was 25 early in the week. But anyway, there you go. Yeah, but I mean, he's probably not going to be good enough, is he? But it just seemed, I would kick myself if I hadn't backed him.
Well, what I can tell you is you're both looking forward to it, which is the main thing. Now, anything else that's attracting your eye? And we've got two very difficult handicaps. The draw might be interesting. Is there enough pace? Well, okay, you're not having to commentate it. Poor old Simon is having to commentate today. I mean, what do you think of the International? What do you make of it, and where do you see the pace? And is it going to be stand side? Is it going to be the far side?
You know what, Rupert? There's so little pace in the race. It's extraordinary. 27 runners, and I think I found Swift Approval and Havre de Pay as the only likely front runners. So it might not be run at a blistering pace, which is what you would normally expect in a field of that size. The draw is just... Well, I think it's so confusing because at the Royal meeting, of course, the Wokingham winner went up the stands rail, and that seemed to be better. And in the Hunt Cup, the whole field sort of came across to the stand side. So I think every runner in the race is a hostage to a possible draw effect and where the jockeys go to. And I like the look of Maxime, who's a progressing horse. I think he's got a lot of potential. Thought he ran really well last time. They dropped him back to 7 furlongs, a trip that he sees really well. But he's drawn in stall 1, which is against the far rail. It could be the greatest draw in the world, or it could be the worst.
Well, I'm afraid I'm in the Maxime camp as well, because he's also £7 well in as well. He looks
very well handicapped.
very well. But you know, the draw is the problem. When you see the draw, he does give me. I'm not as confident as I would have been. Where are you going, Mike?
Well, I mean, Simon just mentioned Swift Approval there. He's drawn on that far side as well, isn't he, to take him along there, Maxime. I like Maxime because he's a half-brother to one of my favourite horses, Al-Kazim. Do you know what? The horse that really intrigues me in this race is number 7, Flaming Spear, because I've never seen a horse come through a field in such classy fashion as he did when he won at Newcastle back in the winter time. He was due to run the Bunbury Cup last week and didn't, but he's got some talent on him, this horse, and I think he'll be played very, very late by the master of the master himself, Robert Winston. Robert's such a good rider at these hold-up horses. I think he's going to run a big race.
Okay, so Flaming Spear for you, Maxime, but it's all proviso.
Yeah, I'm hoping. You know, I do think that, you know, if he's in the right place, he's bound to run a big race. But there are plenty like that as well, you know, including Fastnet Tempest. If he handles the ground, he's got to be a leading contender.
A bit of an if, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the first race, people saying Nialetti is the best 2-year-old filly in this country, because obviously Aidan O'Brien's got some quite good ones we've seen this week, Happily and others. But where do you stand on Nialetti in the first? Is that the one to beat?
Well, I think the one thing she's got in her favour is she's going to see out the trip incredibly well, because she was second in the Chesham Stakes here at the Royal meetings, back to 6 furlongs. It was a pretty good run behind Clemmy, you know, a typical Aidan O'Brien 2-year-old that just gets better with each run. Clemmy is a full sister or a half sister to Churchill. You know, she's beginning to look very good now. So it was a good run at Newmarket. So I think Nialetti, on balance, has got the form.
can see why they called it Clemmy.
Yeah, it's clever, isn't it?
It's very clever. It's
Yeah.
a good name. But anyway, but the Clemmy's not running. What about in the Porsche Handicap? Simon Crisford's Century Dream might be the favourite. Clearly has bolted up in 2 good handicaps last time out. Is this horse still ahead of the handicapper and one to motor on home today?
Well, at least he'll know he'll like the ground as well, Rupert, won't he? But I will say, isn't it great to see a company like Porsche sponsoring racing? I've always had a thing about major car companies not getting involved in horse racing, given the horsepower connection. You cynic, pathetic.
He's trying very hard to get.
No, he's already on their books, obviously.
It'll only be a test drive, nothing more than that, presumably. But I mean,
You don't have a courtesy car.
yeah, it'd be
You
nice,
work
wouldn't
here
it?
as the race day presenter. Come on, Mike.
Yeah, I'm falling behind it. Not my agent, if I had one, would get onto that, wouldn't he?
It is good. You're absolutely
yeah,
right.
It is good, and more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. Because BMW sponsor in Australia, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it is a good industry to approach, isn't it? I mean, racing needs to find sponsors from outside the sport. So often, racing is reliant on bookmakers and
I do know that Porsche are actually trying to get into, been getting involved in equestrian sport because of 4-wheel drives, they realise that there's a market there. So,
they sponsor the Lowther Stakes at York.
Yeah, they do.
So,
Absolutely, yeah.
So there is.
Yeah.
right, any other car manufacturer you want to mention now?
So that's his Jaguar lined
It's a
up.
very
yeah.
good Jaguar sponsorship. That one.
Anyway, on that basis, but who is winning? But who's going to help me pay for my Porsche by winning this race then?
What when in the?
Porsche Handicap.
Oh, I don't know. I quite like Century Dream. You mentioned him, obviously. So Fire Brigade have a chance, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and
Hayley Turner.
When's Hayley Turner's never retiring?
No, I think Hayley's got it right, hasn't she? She's keeping herself fit by riding out regularly at James Fanshaw's, and she does a lot of
Well, she's riding out of
TV.
Michael's as well. So
Well, there you go,
and
Michael
that's
as
why
well.
Michael's
Yeah.
put her up on Fire Brigade.
Yeah.
I see she's been tipped up, but I'm loath to tip up my brother's
Are
horses.
you commentating on that race?
No,
Rupert?
I won't cry this time. No,
Brilliant.
I've got to do the.
That was
yeah.
legendary.
Yeah, well, I'm doing Tuesday, but the moment's gone. If he wins, it's a 3rd time Goodwood Cup. What's that matter?
Yeah, there'll be a bit worried about the ground, won't there, for Big Orange at Goodwood? If we get the wet weather, he really wants it fast, doesn't he?
Listen, Mike. Well, you all know how to commentate. I just get hysterical. That's my one foray. But anyway,
You can do it, Rupert. I tell you. No question
Fire
about
Brigade,
that.
but Fire Brigade, I think has got a chance. And Hayley, if she wouldn't be, I just think might have an each-way chance. I see Pricewise has tipped the horse up.
Tom has he? Tom
Yeah.
Siegel?
Yeah.
Right, well, there you go. I know Tom's had a rough summer, but he's still a fantastic judge, isn't he? Gifted
He's not
tipster.
the only tipster that's had a rough summer. I think a lot of tipsters have found it very difficult this week. Not you, Mike, you've been doing okay, haven't you? Some of them, I don't know.
I couldn't possibly say.
Shui Feng in the Hunt Cup.
Shui Feng, yeah. Absolutely.
How on earth did he pick that
Well,
out?
it was a massive prize, wasn't
The
it?
Feng Shui was with him.
Feng Shui.
Was it like this? Is that what you think it was?
Yes, you were staring in the right direction.
Yeah,
and up
28 to 1, I was.
Did you back it, I hope?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, you could buy the Porsche, then you can buy the Porsche.
Oh,
then.
mate, wouldn't that be
Anyway,
nice?
so what's your nap of the day then, Mike?
My nap of the day, oh God, I can't go for anything the King George. I keep umming and ahhing the whole time about it. I like William Haggis's Hathala in the big race up at York, actually.
Okay, that's
Is
fair.
that all
dues.
right?
That's fine. Hathal, yeah, that is in the
in the York Stakes,
Right.
the Sky Bet York Stakes. Yeah.
And what are you going for, sir?
Well, it is boring. I do think Enable will take a lot of beating. I think Atkinson Grimshaw will run well in the last race. Quite a progressive horse trained by Andrew Balding. And I hope for Maxime, but stall 1 is a big problem.
Okay, well, you're going to be going upstairs, won't you? It's a good view up there, isn't it?
It's a fantastic view here at Ascot. Here's me wanting to continue commentating at Ascot. But it's a lovely view. There's not too many excuses from a commentary point of view because they have great height. And it's a good place also, and this is putting my neck on the line to call a close finish. It's a really good angle.
I can concur with that because
Yeah, you've
the
been.
only time I've done it.
I haven't called a King George, and nor am I likely to be asked to, I suspect, if you're around. But how many have you done? How many King Georges have you done?
Not that many. I've done quite a few on course, but there were only 4 for Channel 4 because we only took.
That's right, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So
You did a load
to
before that on-
Gruda. I remember calling De Lamy, who was a very impressive winner of the King George, and that was for something called the World Series. Do you remember that?
I remember the Emirates World
Yeah,
Series.
that's right. De Lamy's King George that year was part of the World Series, and it was a slightly different production. Not quite the professional production that you're involved with today, and to put it mildly, it was hairy. I'll never forget it. Everything was falling apart.
Okay. Well,
Was that when Chris Lincoln was involved,
There was
the
this
American
sort of man
broadcaster?
mountain called Chris Lincoln,
I remember him.
who had the great.
he did like his food by the looks of
Yes,
things.
he did, and he had
character.
he had a great ability of talking non-stop for about 10 minutes and saying absolutely nothing, which is the mark of a great TV presenter.
Well, while we go down
He
Mary...
could fill for America.
Well, both of you have a great day, as we will obviously have some more King George memories today, but that gives us the perfect cue to look back over some of the great races of the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth Stakes.